Sam Seder on the Majority Report. I want to welcome back to the program Meron Rapoport. He is editor of Local Call and writer at 972 plus 972 magazine. Meron, welcome back to the program.
Welcome. Happy to be here.
You and I have talked a few times over the past, 6-8 months about the huge protest movement that we had seen from the Israeli population against so-called judicial reforms that the Netanyahu government were proposing, and in some instances actually carried through, at least to some extent. And the dynamic and the question that we were asking was, would there be a connection in the minds of many of these protesters between the authoritarianism that they were protesting that was happening domestically and that which has been practiced against essentially the Palestinian people for decades? And could that coalesce? In the meantime, of course, 2 weeks ago now, and I should say we're recording this on Tuesday, October 17th, there's a lot of news that is happening just now. So I want to make sure that people understand that, we're still sort of filtering information. But you wrote a piece on the 9th entitled "The End of the Netanyahu Doctrine." And I want to talk about that first before we talk about what's going on. And that being, from my understanding, at least in terms of like my Jewish education as a child, having this education in the 70s, with Hebrew school teachers who, had tattoos on their arms, having come from the Holocaust, where the Holocaust and Israel were really the two prominent things that we learned about in Hebrew school at that time, and then Hebrew and then Jewish culture. But the relationship between the Holocaust and Israel was inextricable. I mean, in particularly, obviously now, but then, we're only 30 years out. It's actually longer from the time that I learned about these things than it was then from the Holocaust. And the premise of Israel always was a place for Jews to be safe and have security. And in many respects, that was punctured 10 days ago now. And your piece looks at the aside, like beyond the moral questions, but the simple practical question of, has the Netanyahu doctrine, which in many ways he inherited from others, Sharon and perhaps some before him, has that fundamentally failed, and is there an awareness of that failure? Fill in the gaps there.
There are many issues here. It's really this attack, terrible and really despicable attack by Hamas last Saturday morning on kibbutzim and settlements around Gaza and small cities around Gaza on the Israeli side, was a watershed really that is still in the making, and we are still seeing its effect. Yes, it even touched, as you said, something that I don't think I referred to so much in my piece. Yes, Israel was founded, the goal of Zionism, not just Israel. The goal of Zionism was to give Jews a safe haven in which they will be free from attacks for being Jews. That was the idea, the fundamental idea of Zionism. That's the idea behind the foundation of Israel. And if 75 years after the establishment of the State of Israel, this cannot be secured, and Israel has become in one day the most dangerous place for Jews around the world, where the Holocaust, the Israeli government is saying that was like a Holocaust. This is a very dangerous conception to play with, because, okay, you say this is like the Holocaust, but and this gains you support internationally, even internally, but certainly internationally. But what does it mean? It means that Israel, that was built in order to prevent another Holocaust, is experiencing a Holocaust itself. So this is really fundamental. I don't think I really went into it in my piece. But yes, I think two not conflicting doctrine that Netanyahu, yes, some of them he inherited from his previous prime ministers. Some of them were his own. Two doctrine really fell apart. The one doctrine is, the first doctrine is that Hamas is beneficial. The fact that Hamas continues to govern Gaza is beneficial to Israel, because as Hamas is governing Gaza first, the international community will never accept Hamas. So Israel can always say, we have nobody to negotiate with because this is a murderous organization, even before the brutal and murderous attack of last Saturday. And secondly, it will jeopardize any attempt by the Palestinian Authority, by the PLO, by Abu Mazen, to negotiate any peace agreement, because he will be looked at as one who does not represent the Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people is divided between one government in Gaza and one government in Ramallah. And this, for Netanyahu, was really, yes, in a way inherited, but you have to remember that the coup in which Hamas took power in Gaza was in 2007, and Netanyahu returned to government in 2009. So most of his time since 2009, last 14 years, in which he was almost uninterrupted as prime minister, was with Hamas governing Gaza. And he really, and he said it, it's not something that was hidden. He said that this is an interest for Israel, because it will make the demand for a Palestinian state impossible. So that's one doctrine. And that in order to tame Hamas, what we need is, yes, Hamas is of course an enemy, but if we will let it be on the one hand, and even give it money, allow Qatar to deliver money and things like that, then it is a small organization. It cannot really do too much harm to Israel, or we will build a huge fence that it will not be able to cross. And if they do problems, we will bomb them, and everything will be fine, and we will benefit. There will be relative quiet in Israel, and no potential of Palestinian state on the other. This collapsed when this fence or wall collapsed in a way that nobody really understand how it came about, but it happened. It happened, and it was the fence was toppled down, I think, in more than almost 30 places around this fence that is only 60 kilometers long, and thousands of Palestinians entered Israel. So this doctrine fell apart at the moment. Thousands of Palestinians crossed the border, and of course what they did later. And as the doctrine said, okay, we don't need army because we have a fence. The army was in the West Bank, so the people, the civilian, were really left alone to be massacred by Hamas. The second doctrine that fell apart was the doctrine that is more unique to Netanyahu, which says, Israel, in order to prosper, contrary to what Labour government did, that in order to secure the future of Israel, we need to solve, in this way or the other, the Palestinian issue. Netanyahu said no. Palestinian issue is not relevant to the prosperity and well-being of Israel. We could bypass Ramallah. The last thing that, just a few days before the attack, the Hamas attack, somebody said that when there was a talk about the negotiation with Saudi Arabia, and the Palestinians said they want some benefits, political benefits from this agreement. Someone was quoted from the Israeli government, we will not let the mayor of Ramallah to interfere. That's how they referred to Abu Mazen, the Palestinian president. So the idea of Netanyahu was, we can bypass Ramallah. We can have peace with the Arab world, Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, Morocco, and now, of course, there were this negotiation with Saudi Arabia. And we will have peace with all these Arab countries that need us, Israel, because we are strong militarily, we are strong economically, and we are strong politically. We have political leverage, especially in the US. They need us. They will do peace with us. And this way we will make even peace with Palestinians, but this is not really important. They don't have a veto power. The moment the thousands of Palestinians crossed this fence, it was clear message that the conflict is here. The conflict is between Israelis and Palestinians, between Jews and Palestinians living in this land, not in Saudi Arabia, not in the Emirates, not in Bahrain. Our war is not our conflict is not with Saudis. Our conflict is not with Emiratis. Our conflict is with the Palestinian. And this is a moment of truth for the Israelis.
How we should say, this concept, it's arguably about sequencing, but it really is essentially the Netanyahu government saying, we have taken care of this. And I guess I've described it as the appetite, if you will, or the confidence that Israel had the resources to suppress the Palestinian people in this way, so that it was not a urgent issue, but rather one that, we'll deal with down the road, and we're just going to move forward. And this is going to be something like, I don't know, the way that some other country might deal with some other, non-urgent, but, somewhat problematic issue. It falls apart. How has the Israeli people responded to this? Obviously, aside from the shock and the sadness and the horror of the attack, has the Israeli people, I should say the Jewish Israelis, have they begun to sort of absorb this in a political manner, or have they said, we're going to first deal with the security issue? Like, where are we relative to the protests that we were, several months ago?
The protest I will go to in a minute. I think what happened, and I think I describe it in my article, and unfortunately, it is coming. We are seeing the after effect. The fact that Israelis did realize, maybe even without saying it, but did realize that the whole doctrine of Netanyahu, certainly the doctrine of encouraging Hamas and letting Hamas govern Gaza, this is widespread understanding that it was a terrible failure. But also that the dream of making peace with Saudi Arabia as a way to solve the issue with the Palestinian is also shattered. This is widespread. The second less the first, but still widespread. But the outcome does not, for the moment, is not that, okay, if our conflict is with the Palestinian, let's go and make peace with them. I think the outcome at the moment, at least regarding Gaza, because West Bank and even Palestinian inside Israel is something else. But regarding Gaza, I think the outcome is that most Israelis, and even a good friend of mine in what is called the left, or used to be called the left, saying, okay, if our conflict is with these Palestinians from Gaza, and what they do is massacre us, then we don't have any, the only way we could deal with it is massacre them. Wipe out Hamas, wipe out Gaza, maybe push hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of Gaza into Sinai, making a new Nakba, and even, people would easily, a columnist, commentator in the Israeli national TV, wrote in his tweet, in his personal account, but still he is the military commentator of the national TV. He said that if 1 million Palestinians should be killed in order to restore a quiet for the Israeli villages around Gaza, so that will be the price, 1 million Palestinian killed. This is, touching with genocide. So I'm not saying all Israelis are there, but unfortunately many are at least in saying, well, let's wipe out Gaza, they deserve it, they supported this massacre done by Hamas, they supported the killing of civilians and rape of women and burning whole families alive, and they supported it. They voted for Hamas, although it's not really correct because they didn't really vote for Hamas. Hamas made a coup, but anyhow, they voted for Hamas. This is how it is conceived in Israel. So they are responsible. So there's no way that what they learned from the fact that Palestinians are here and our conflict is with the Palestinians is, let's get rid of them.
And what is their perspective towards Netanyahu? I mean, to the extent that you can obviously sense the broad mood, and I mean, I've heard other reports that confirm, your sense of where the Israeli population is. Does that necessarily mean that they continue to subscribe to Netanyahu's sort of twin principles, as it were? I mean, obviously now you can't ignore if they are saying we must, seek revenge and essentially wipe out then obviously they're not, subscribing to the idea that we can overlook this. But have they, what's their perspective, I guess, on Netanyahu?
Netanyahu position seems very, very, very weak. There was a poll in which last Friday, in which his party, Likud party, fell from 33 or 32 seats now to 19, meaning losing more than a third of its power. The coalition went down from 64 seats. That's a small majority, but still a majority in the 120 seats Knesset parliament. They went down from 64 to 42. That was never witnessed in Israeli political history, such in less than a year. But it's not only the polls. You can see it. Ministers of his government are chased away wherever they come. When they come to hospitals, when they come to bereaved families, when they are chased away, time after time. Yesterday, for example, the culture minister, Miki Zohar, said, he was asked, did he went to give his condolences to bereaved families, and he said, I'm not going unless I know I'm wanted. And then he was asked, so are you wanted? Did you go to any family? He said no. So that means out of the 600 to 700 funerals that were already, people that were declared dead, people that their corpses were not identified, out of the 6, no one was ready to accept a minister from the Likud. No one. So the situation and referring to the first doctrine, the doctrine of let's live with Hamas, because preventing Hamas, the core, the prime goal is to keep Hamas because it prevents a Palestinian state. Israeli public will not accept any situation in which this war ends and there is a Hamas government in Gaza. It will not accept. If something like this happens, I'm not exaggerating, the Israeli tanks will leave Gaza and go to Jerusalem. They will go to Jerusalem to topple Netanyahu. If something like this happened, if after the war, even if 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 Palestinians are killed, but still Hamas will be, the government of Gaza will be in the hands of Hamas, it will be the end of Netanyahu, and maybe a brutal end. Now, this does not mean that they go to the other part of the equation saying, okay, if there's no Hamas government in Gaza, let's bring the PA to Gaza and start negotiating a two-state solution. No, we are not there. We are very far from this, very far. Now, only rage, hate, and really feeling of revenge is pushing the people. But so the doctrine of keeping Hamas in power cannot return. Cannot return.
President Biden, we're speaking on Tuesday. President Biden is scheduled to go to Israel tomorrow. The commentary here about that was that this was a way in which to forestall the invasion of Gaza. The idea being that Israel would not invade Gaza while Biden was in country, and perhaps not while he was in the region. And the idea being that they would secure humanitarian relief for Palestinians in Gaza. And I think there was some hope. Certainly, I felt that earlier today, that maybe with every hour, day delay, it lessened the chances of an incursion into Gaza, and which I think, by all accounts, it's unreasonable to believe it won't lead to a massive number of civilian casualties. With that said, just before we began this interview, maybe hours ago, there is a report, and I think it's confirmed that something hit one of the last functioning hospitals in Gaza City. It was the Baptist hospital, a missile. I've seen conflicting reports as to, was this an Israeli missile? Was it a Hamas missile that misfired? At the end of the day, we've seen Israel say, we're going to hit the hospitals. We're going to hit this area. We know that there's been bombing in the south, presumably where Palestinians would be safe from, according to what they were told by Israel. So, but this is regardless of, and I don't know if we can ever, fully know where this missile comes from, because of the nature of the propaganda that will come out of all sides, and the nature of war. But what does this? Are there any? Is it unreasonable for someone like myself to be sitting here thinking there's a chance that Israel will not invade Gaza, because if Netanyahu knows that he is blamed for this incursion by Hamas, and he knows that the Israeli populace overwhelmingly, has this intense desire for, call it revenge, or call it, eliminating Hamas at any price. It doesn't seem to me that he is politically incentivized at all to do anything except for to provide that, that attack on Hamas. And then it really becomes a question of is that even possible? I mean, Hamas leaders are in Turkey. They're in I imagine half a dozen other countries around the world. But what's your sense of both those things?
As you said, yes, just an hour before we recorded, 2 hours, there was a report that an hospital, the Baptist hospital in the old part of Gaza, was hit, and reports are talking about between 200 to 500 people being killed. And as I talk now, there are reports that the thousands of Palestinians are marching on the Mukata, in Ramallah, on the President Palace in Ramallah, demanding the resignation of Abu Mazen. So it could be a turning point. And tomorrow, when this will be, it will be today, Biden is arriving. Certainly, it does not seem, it didn't seem possible that Israel will go into ground offensive before Biden leaves the area. He's coming to Israel, then he goes to Amman, and I think other places in the Middle East. So as long as Biden is in the Middle East, I don't see ground offensive. The ground offensive, and to a certain extent, I think the American involvement that we have not witnessed before. Blinken participated, Secretary Blinken participated yesterday in a meeting of the War Cabinet. Actually, it's an American official, he's not an Israeli official, and he participated in the War Cabinet. And 5 people are there, and Blinken. And Biden will attend this cabinet tomorrow. America is involved in a way that was never before. Even in the 73 war, the Yom Kippur War, America did send aid, military aid, during the war. It didn't send aircrafts to the region. And we are talking about not 2 armies attacking Israel like in 73, not the Egyptian and Syrian army using Soviet weapons, just 1,000 militants holding Kalashnikov and RPGs. This American involvement, I think, means, first of all, that I think Biden and the American administration do not think that Israel can handle this conflict alone. America has lost confidence in the ability of the Netanyahu government to handle this conflict. It takes the conflict out of the hands of Israel. This is something really unprecedented.
And do you think the nature of that lack of confidence
will prevent a ground offensive? I don't know. I think some kind of ground offensive will come. It could be more like what happened in Lebanon, meaning that Israel will take strategic zones in the Gaza Strip without really taking over Gaza City with 100, more than 1 million people living in it, and the whole complication of, yes, hundreds of thousands left, but still hundreds of thousands stayed. So, but maybe Biden is aiming for something else. I don't know. Maybe Biden is aiming really to get the Arab world with the PA to Gaza. Maybe that's the arrangement that Biden is pushing for. This will be very hard to swallow for Netanyahu, almost impossible, because all his heritage will be shattered. For Gantz, the head of changed the name of his parties, I don't remember, but now he's in the war cabinet, in the emergency cabinet. For Gantz, it's less of a problem to accept the PA back in Gaza. Will Hamas accept it? Will the PA accept to be who will guarantee Israel? International force? I don't think Biden is coming only for photo op. That's my understanding. But again, I think things are evolving, and if this attack on the hospital will be confirmed that it is Israeli, as the Palestinians are sure for the moment, maybe the Israelis say, they don't say it's Palestinian, they say they're not sure. If it will be confirmed that this was an Israeli attack, I think it could change the course of things. It will maybe remind what happened in Lebanon in 96, I think, when there was an attack by Israel, and then in Cana, they hit a shelter where hundreds of Lebanese took refuge, and the attack stopped the next day. So I think Biden is risking U.S. is risking, if it will let Israel go its way, is risking its position in the Middle East. I'm not sure. We're not talking only about Hezbollah in Lebanon. We're talking about Jordan, with 6 or 7 million Palestinians living in Jordan that will not accept massacre of Palestinians on a large scale in Gaza. We are talking about Egypt. America might risk, and I think this is why Biden is coming, because what he wants is a coalition against Iran, and Iran is a proxy of Russia and maybe of China. He wants a coalition against Iran. If his coalition will be in danger because of Israeli invasion to Gaza, then I think this is American interest to stop the Israeli offensive in order not to put in danger the American interest in the region.
It's fascinating. I don't know that it really has been reported, or at least at the very least, it has not been highlighted that Blinken sat in on that war council, and in the way that you're characterizing it. I don't think that it. I suspect that it's been reported, but not necessarily contextualized. And I think the same with Biden's trip, and certainly there doesn't seem to be a narrative in this country that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your analysis is that America doesn't trust Israel to respond to this in a way that is measured or that maintains stability, because there's a real danger of this escalating beyond this conflict, even beyond Israel and Hezbollah.
And maintaining American interest. Maintaining American interest in the region, not jeopardizing American interest in the region.
My sense has always been, up until George W. Bush, that the United States played a role in which, and sometimes it was attempting to be an honest broker between different parties, but it played a backdoor role where it was basically it would get the Israeli government to tap on the brakes, and was used by the Israeli government as a way of saying to the desire of the population for some type of retribution or attack or violence or aggressiveness, it's the United States that is essentially inhibiting us, because at the end of the day, if we need weapons, that's where we're getting them. Do you see this as a return to that role?
Yes, but even in a more forceful way, because Israel is so weak now. This leads to demonstrations. The Israeli government is very weak. Netanyahu is extremely weak, and his government is extremely weak. So I think the Americans are acting even before Israel started the ground offense, the ground attack. And this is something I think unprecedented, that the Americans are already in the planning of the attack, not just, watching, encouraging Israel to react, but then taming Israel, playing this game. No, now they are in the decision, in the room where the war decisions are being taken. And this, yes, on the one hand, of course, gives a lot of, Israel has America at its back. So it's, a very good feeling for Israelis. At the same time, as I told you, I think Israeli, they are not sure that Netanyahu government can keep the American interest in the region, because an all-out attack on Gaza could not only drag Hezbollah in, but could really undermine a Western-leaning regime in the region, like Jordan, like Egypt, like even maybe Saudi Arabia. They could be in real trouble if a real large-scale massacres take place in Gaza. I really don't know. I really don't know. It's and Biden, I think, understand it, because you have to understand something I wrote. Israel was never an asset for the US. It was always a liability in the region. It was not an asset. When the Americans went to the first Gulf War, they had to silence Israel. When they went to the second Gulf War, they had to silence Israel. Every time the Americans are really decide to act military in the region, what they need from Israel is to be silenced, not to help them, but to be silenced. So Israel is a liability, it's not an asset. It's not an asset at all.
There's been no...
Today is jeopardizing American interests in the region. The coalition they want to make against Iran, Israel is a liability in building this coalition. It's not helping, contrary to what Israel is always claiming, but I think it's just not true.
Meron Rapoport, thank you for staying with us. I know that you got to get out and do some coverage of some protests or protest yourself. Editor of the local call and writer at Plus 972 magazine. Love to be able to check back within the next days or weeks that are coming, and I hope that you stay safe. And I'm sorry that all of this is happening. But
these are really terrible days. These are the worst days that I experienced in my life. I've never experienced something like it.
Well,
the worst.
My heart goes out to you and all the people involved in this conflict, and just the incredible amount of death and hopefully some of which can be avoided. But thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.